A blockbuster drug promised to protect millions of hearts. But the science it was built on? It was a complete house of cards, engineered by a single company employee working deep inside some of Japan's most prestigious universities.
This is the story of the Diovan scandal, a case of data manipulation so deep, so profound, it literally shook the foundations of Japanese medical research and forced a nationwide reckoning. Okay, let's get right into how this all went down.
So, first things first, we need to understand the drug at the very center of this storm, Diovan. And we also have to grasp the sheer scale of the research that gave it this almost untouchable aura of scientific fact.
Now, you have to realize, Diovan wasn't some experimental fringe treatment. No way. It was a standard go-to medication for high blood pressure. It's what's known as an ARB, or angiotensin II receptor blocker. It was prescribed to millions of patients, and its effectiveness was basically considered a given, thanks in large part to a bunch of major clinical trials. And just look at this list. The research wasn't happening in some back-alley lab. We are talking about 5 incredibly prestigious Japanese universities, each one conducting these huge studies. This kind of academic backing, it gave the results an incredible seal of approval. But behind the scenes, behind all these respected names, something was deeply, deeply wrong.
So how exactly did they pull it off? How was the science corrupted? Well, the deception was actually pretty simple in its goal, but kind of sophisticated in how they did it.
This right here, this lays out the fraud perfectly. On one side, you've got the published papers claiming Diovan had these amazing protective effects, way beyond just lowering blood pressure. But on the other side, the hidden truth. The raw data didn't actually support those huge claims at all. So it was changed until it did.
And let's be really clear. This wasn't a simple mistake or some rounding error. Not even close. This was systematic manipulation. Key data points like blood pressure readings and the number of heart attacks were straight up altered. The statistical methods they used were swapped out just to create positive results. They even filled in missing patient data with made-up numbers. This was a deliberate, calculated effort to paint a completely false picture of how good this drug was.
So who was behind all of this, and why would they take such a massive risk? Well, the answer, as it so often is, comes down to people, power, and a whole lot of money.
The investigation ultimately zeroed in on one man, Nobuo Shirohashi, an employee of Novartis, the company that manufactured the drug. Now get this, he participated in the university research not as an independent scientist, but as a corporate insider with one mission, to alter the data. And to make the deception even worse, the company also used uncredited ghostwriters to help draft the scientific papers, which hid their involvement even deeper and left the actual university researchers pretty much in the dark.
But why? Why go to all this trouble? The motive was brutally simple: competition. The market for blood pressure medication was, and is, incredibly crowded. To stand out from the pack, Diovan needed a special edge. These fake studies provided the proof that it did more than its rivals, protecting kidneys, preventing heart attacks. And that was a super powerful marketing tool to convince doctors to prescribe their drug over all the others. And this number, this says it all, doesn't it? The potential payoff for this whole deception wasn't just some small change. It was estimated to be in the hundreds of billions of yen. We're talking billions of dollars in increased annual sales. With that kind of money on the table, the incentive to cheat was just enormous.
You know, a fraud this big couldn't stay hidden forever. But uncovering the truth, that was a slow, painstaking process that took years of questions from researchers who just knew something wasn't right.
The first cracks didn't appear in some big expose. It was much quieter than that. Just academic skepticism. Other researchers started noticing weird statistical anomalies, data that just didn't add up. People started asking questions as early as 2006, but it wasn't until 2012 that the government finally launched a full-blown investigation, which led to the arrest of Shirohashi a year later.
When the fraud was finally exposed, it sent absolute shockwaves through the medical world. The fallout was immediate, but the long-term changes it sparked are probably its most important legacy.
The consequences came down fast and hard. Nobuo Shirohashi was convicted. Those prestigious scientific papers were retracted in total disgrace. Government scrutiny went way up. And maybe worst of all, the scandal left a huge stain on the international reputation of Japanese clinical research, forcing the entire world to ask some tough questions about its integrity.
But out of this huge crisis, some really crucial reforms are born. This scandal was the direct catalyst for Japan's Clinical Trials Act of 2018, a landmark law designed to make sure this kind of thing could never happen again. It forced transparency, demanding that all trials be registered and all conflicts of interest be declared. The entire system of medical research in Japan was put under a microscope and basically rebuilt to be much, much stronger.
At the end of the day, the Diovan case serves as this powerful and honestly pretty scary reminder of the constant tension between the pressures of the drug industry and the ethical demands of real science. It forces us to ask a really fundamental question. In a system where the financial stakes are this high, what safeguards do we actually have to protect the integrity of the data that affects all of our health?